How did that one kid from your school die? Story 1. Cancer. And he was the school bully, so everyone was happy he was gone from school until he died. Then we all felt guilty. Shockingly, the priest, it was a Catholic school, brought it up during the weekly Ask the Priest Anything hour. He was a bully, and many of you disliked him, but you didn't kill him. You didn't give him cancer. I want you to remember that and not blame yourselves. But don't forget him. Bullies aren't happy. Sometimes they act that way because their home lives are hard or because they don't like themselves. He was young and had a whole life ahead of him, and he might have changed. Don't forget him and try not to judge him. That's for God. 50 years later, I still remember that day. Story 2. A kid who used to bully me a bit. Not a truly bad kid overall, but the week before, he had grabbed me by the collarbone and dragged me around the quad like it was a handle. It was still sore when he ran out in front of a car at a crossing and spent about a week in a coma before he died. We were only about 7 or 8, and when they went around the class asking everyone to share their favorite memory of him, I couldn't come up with anything. I just said, he used to bully me, but I didn't want him to die. Everyone looked at me like I was a monster, and the teacher got flustered and quickly moved on. Story 3. Our school guidance counselor was married to a very wealthy man. They had a son, Brett, spoiled, good-looking, and popular. Maybe a little entitled and douchey, but far less than you'd expect. Overall, a decent guy. Brett started dating a girl who was poor. Her family shared a house with 3 other families just so they could live in the district and send their kids to our school. Brett's mom did not approve at all, and she wasn't shy about it. She absolutely loathed the girl. The longer Brett kept seeing her, the angrier his mom became. Then Brett and the girl decided to attend the same university. His mom was furious. Halfway through senior year, before it all could really come to a head, Brett died in a car accident. I never saw his mom again. Never saw the girl again. They both left, she quit, and the girl transferred. It was such an unexpectedly tragic end to what had felt like a silly soap opera we'd all been following. Every time I think about Brett, I think about how much his mom must regret spending the last months of his life bitterly fighting him over something as stupid as loving a girl whose parents were in the wrong tax bracket. Story 4. I went to school with a kid who was born HIV positive and had developed AIDS due to his parents being drug users. During the last 3 years of high school, he had 3 surgeries and ended up having nearly 40% of his lungs removed. As you can imagine, he was bullied a lot. To be fair, he wasn't the easiest person to deal with. He grew up in foster care and was very socially inept, but my group of friends and I always tried to include him as much as we could. We all graduated in 2009 and didn't hear much about him afterward, aside from the occasional bit of gossip or a rare sighting on the street. Then, in 2017, a friend of mine who was volunteering with an NGO that helps homeless people saw him in one of the food lines. By that point, he had been living on the streets for quite a while, and there wasn't much that could be done. A lot of us were still in touch, so we pulled together donations and gave him everything he would need to survive for a good while. He was really thankful and opened up about his life, how foster care let him go at 18, and how things had spiraled after that. Not even 2 days later, another volunteer called my friend to say he had gotten into a fight at the shelter and was expelled. As he was leaving the building, he fell and hit his head on the curb, dying instantly. Story 5. I lived near and shared a bus with this girl for many years when I was a kid. She was a year older than me, so there were a few years when we didn't really see each other, but we stayed friendly acquaintances and eventually became friends over time. We hung out a few times in middle school and high school, in groups, but I wouldn't claim to have been one of her close friends or anything. She was, in a word, amazing. At the risk of putting her on a pedestal, she felt like a TV character in a larger-than-life way. Beautiful, funny, talented, she sang solos at school concerts and was a gifted musician, intelligent, and, apparently, a top student. On paper, and in the way she presented herself to the world, she was perfect. In a truly tragic turn, her sister reportedly found her hanging from a tree in the woods near their house one autumn day during her junior year. All evidence pointed to suicide. I won't speculate on what personal demons she was facing. I didn't know her that deeply, but it's clear she wasn't as happy as she seemed. Her sister later shared that she had been struggling with severe depression and probably other things none of us knew about. I was a sophomore at the time, and the last time I saw her was on the bus ride home. That night, The news exploded across our social media. Skype was the big thing back then. The entire junior class organized a walkout and held a memorial ceremony in the parking lot behind the high school. We watched them through the classroom windows, and you could feel their grief even from a distance. At her wake, her parents put together a tribute video showing clips and photos from her childhood all the way through to her teen years, capturing her growth into the incredibly talented young woman she had become. The video ended with her singing a solo from a school concert the year before, and it was heartbreakingly beautiful. Everyone cried. I don't want to get into a debate about suicide, but she changed the way I see it forever. I'll never forget her. Rest in peace, friend. Story 6. One kid died by suicide after being bullied, something the school was well aware of but did absolutely nothing about. Everyone, including students and parents, had begged the head teacher to expel the bully. The police were at the school twice a week, but the bully's parents constantly threatened legal action and even physical violence if the school took any steps against their son. Eventually, the victim hanged himself at a construction site where the bully's dad worked, leaving behind a note detailing everything that had happened. Only then was the bully finally expelled and arrested. After that, things escalated fast. The bully's family home was attacked, their cars were smashed, and the dad got beaten up whenever people saw him around town. Despite trying to stay, the whole family had to leave the county because instead of taking responsibility or showing any remorse, they doubled down, threatening to burn down the school, assault teachers, and take care of the parents of other kids. Vigilante justice at its finest. Story 7. He was jumped by 3 men and a woman after a house party that we had all attended earlier that night. They caught him walking home alone, beat the hell out of him, and left him unconscious across a set of train tracks. Everyone in the city knew what had happened. The police did nothing. It took them 10 years to finally follow up, and eventually all 4 were charged with murder. The trial was a mess, full of half-truths and outright lies from some pretty shady local characters. I had been good friends with one of the witnesses for the defense until he broke into my apartment and robbed me and my pregnant girlfriend while we were at work. If I remember correctly, only one person was convicted, and it was on a lesser charge. The entire thing was a disaster from the start and a complete travesty of justice. My heart breaks for his mother, who fought for over a decade to get justice for her son. I only knew him casually, but he was a genuinely kind and decent guy. A truly horrific tragedy. I hope you're resting easy, Aaron. Story 8. I've got 2. In Southern California, schools started shutting down early on days with extreme heat or heavy smog. There was no warning, they just sent the kids home. One day, a kid went home with some friends and took out his dad's handgun. He removed the magazine and pointed the gun at his friends. Understandably, they freaked out. He said, "It's not loaded," then placed it to his temple and pulled the trigger. There was a round chambered. After I graduated, my brother's friends invited him to a party. He couldn't go for some reason, probably grounded, knowing him. On the way back from that party, his friends were T-boned at an intersection by a guy who was street racing. He was driving a souped-up Camaro with a racing seat and a 5-point harness. He survived. The 4 kids in the compact economy car, wearing regular seatbelts, all died. Secure your firearms. If you want to race, find a track. Story 9. He was driving while messing with his radio and veered off the road into a tree. He was one of the most popular kids at school. We worked together as lifeguards at the local pool, so I knew him personally. He was always confident, sometimes to the point of arrogance, but undeniably sure of himself. He used to brag constantly about the stereo system his dad had put in his truck, and he always had it blasting as he drove away from the pool. That night, he was coming home from a friend's party around 1 a.m., doing 20 over the speed limit on some of the curviest roads in the county. The crash was horrific, but the coroner said he died on impact, so there wasn't much suffering. When the police and paramedics arrived, the radio was still blaring. A friend of the officer on duty said they had to disconnect the truck's battery just to turn it off. I can't really say I was close to him. Honestly, it's hard to even remember his face now. But to this day, I still get a twist in my stomach when a car passes by with the radio blasting. So much life lost over something so small. Still, I guess he died doing something he loved. A silver lining, I suppose. Story 10. Bit of an intense one. There was a guy in our form class, 15 minutes of admin every morning before the actual school day began. He was what we used to call an emo back then. He'd go weeks without showing up, and we just assumed it was part of the whole emo lifestyle, the way kids do. He'd show up for a few days, then disappear again. It had been a couple of months since we'd last seen him when, one morning, the principal came in. He told us the guy had been murdered. Turns out he had been drinking with someone who, out of nowhere, got angry and beat him to death. The next morning, the killer dismembered him and buried parts of his body in several different graveyards. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.